Good afternoon. Welcome to the Wednesday afternoon meeting of BOCC. What we have to open with here is bid openings, so we'll let clerk of the board take care of that.
We're going to start with the road surfacing materials through May 1st, 2024 through April 30th, 2025. We have our first bid. This bid was submitted by L Rock Industries Incorporated. Looks like they have various prices for each item. The next bid. This bid was submitted by Gardner Rock Incorporated. And they have submitted prices for each item also. Next bid. This bid was submitted by Kalama Quarry, Harold Sorensen Trekking, and they submitted prices for each item. Next bid. This bid was submitted by J.L. Stordahl and Sons Incorporated. And they have submitted a price for each item. And I have one envelope here that does not have a name on it, so I'm just going to open it up to see if it's for this bid. And this one is for the aggregate bituminous surface treatment. So we'll move on to that one. This bid is from L Rock Industries Incorporated. The total cost for bid items is $319,132.39. The next bid. This bid is from J.L. Stordahl and Sons. The total cost for bid items is $422,226.88. And the last bid here. This bid is submitted by Good Crushing, Inc. The total cost for bid items is $414,550.28. And that's the close of the bids. They will be submitted to the Public Works Department for sufficiency and responsiveness. Thanks.
Okay. Public Works excused himself today. They're doing a luncheon for their administrative staff, so that will certainly give them a break to do that. So treasurer.
Good afternoon, Deborah Gardner, Cowlitz County Treasurer. I have the certificate of Cowlitz County, and this is regarding the Three Rivers wastewater authority, and they are going out for bond issue for some of their projects. And because we're a member of that authority, we have this document that we need to sign for the process of them starting their bonding issuance. So when I first got it, I wasn't sure about who was supposed to sign it. So I've been kind of asking around, and I've discovered that I think that either the chair can sign it or Commissioner Mortensen as an executive member of that board at Turwa. So I'm bringing this to you guys for a signature and to determine who wants to sign it. And then I'll get it back to the bond council on this.
Did the language get changed to protect our general fund? I thought I saw some email messages from Doug that suggested the language said we're on the hook for the debt.
Well, in the original agreement that we have, it does obligate us. It's for future obligations in the event that capital improvements are funded through bonds, the governing bodies of each member will be obligated to execute appropriate legal documents committing the members to its share of debt service until the bonds are satisfied. So if there is, some issues with Turwa paying the bonds, we would have some responsibility in our portion of the debt. And this is from the original agreement when this was put together.
I know different entities have different percentages.
Yes,
We at,
right now, Cowlitz County is at 3.31%. Longview's at 59.24, Kelso's at 29.73, and Beacon Hill Sewers at 7.72.
so can you infer if in a worst case scenario, they defaulted, the county's on hook for
1%.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is, I don't know that we have any choice but to do this because we really have to provide a service.
Yeah.
3.31%, I think, is for the most part driven by the leachate that the landfill provides. And that's why our percentage is so small compared to everything else.
Yeah.
The good news too, at least in my opinion, having observed that outfit, very competent. I'm very much impressed with their operations. So everything is penciled out conservatively to be handled by the fees. So we shouldn't see anything. It's just if things really go bad and we unforeseen,
But yeah, I remember them, their approach was the debt service can come right out of the savings.
Yep.
They didn't even take into account any retail value of the refined waste.
Yeah, so I'm happy to be
Yeah,
the signatory on that.
So you're it.
gonna make Arnett.
Okay, we'll have you sign it and then it will go on the agenda for next week on the consent agenda. And just to prepare you, there was a second document that will need to sign at closing. So in a future
Yeah.
date, I'll bring that back just like this and we'll get that signed at that time.
Just for my own edification, could you refresh my memory on, there was a bond game we played with the residuals so that they could have a clean bonding? How did that, how does, yeah, could you tell me all about that?
What do you mean?
Remember maybe 3 or 4 months ago, we were involved in paying off a bond. Okay,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes, when they had a bond that was still outstanding and that was under the county, because that was back when Turwa was under the county. So the county, our name was on that and we were responsible for that if they didn't pay it. They refinanced that debt and so they've paid that off with a refinance. Or maybe they paid. Now I can't remember if they refinanced or if they just paid it off.
They had to pay, they gave us the money or someone got the chunk of money to pay the bonds off, but in fact, we're paying the bonds off through an escrow or
Yeah,
something like that.
so the bonds weren't callable yet, so they put some money, they defeased the bond, put money in
That's the
escrow
term, defeased.
so that when when it was able to be callable, it would be paid off, so that that would be done. So we signed off on all of that because that was still an obligation of the county through Turwa, but we were more responsible for that one.
Yeah. And
that,
they
yeah.
needed to do that to get the bonding capacity for this
Mhm.
one that they knew was upcoming.
Yes.
Was it just the capacity or just the favorable treatment?
To be honest, I don't remember if
doesn't
it
matter.
was,
Yeah.
the exact reason, but
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
But anyway, they're well run, and
Oh, yeah.
I think 3% exposure is more than reasonable.
Okay, thank you.
Any estimate on how much of the taxes due next week are already paid? Do you keep track of that at all?
A lot of the payment, I don't know what exact percent, but the payments that come from the mortgage companies, we haven't received that payment yet.
Oh.
And that will be coming any day.
That's a pretty hefty
Yeah,
percentage, yeah.
yeah. And
Okay.
I don't have that percentage off the top of my head, but it's a lot.
Just out of curiosity, is there a difference today from when you first took over in terms of the number of payments that are paid, that pay the whole year versus in the 2 installments?
I don't know. I haven't analyzed that to see how that's going since I've been treasurer.
What makes that a semi-interesting question is how people are playing inflation. When inflation was 12%, not in recent times, of course, you'd always have to balance, do I keep the money in the bank and make 8% or do I pay the thing off and because later I can pay it off with cheaper dollars? I mean, 6 months was a difference.
Yeah.
Anyhow, just curious.
Yeah, I'll look and,
Oh, don't bother. I mean, unless you're curious too.
yeah, I'll see if it's something I can easily run some reports and see what what it says. I'll let you know. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm gonna go scan this and send it on to the bond council.
We had a couple letters. Did you want to request for recommendations? Did you want to bring those up?
Floodplain by design grant from ecology. They've asked member entities on the collective to sign letters of support. Better. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know what to do with this because the letter itself is. Let me use this. Let me use this one.
There we go.
I don't know quite what to do with the letter because it doesn't really tell me anything about the project, so I'd be signing something blind. And I was hoping, that's why I printed out the letter, that I'd see kind of an abstract of it, but it's not there. Can you find us an abstract for that?
Hmm. So we have a deadline of the 1st, so we do have a few days to see what it is.
I think,
So the idea with floodplain by design is that they end up going through the design and getting that approved, and in the process, they've taken care of all of the SEPA requirements for multiple projects as they complete the full watershed program. As it is, each little segment that they do has to go through a full environmental review. And that, of course, adds lots of time in review. And so this is a way of doing the planning and getting it all reviewed appropriately, but doing it all at once. So Lower Columbia Fish Recovery is particularly focused on the south branch of the Toutle, the South Fork of the Toutle, which has no blockages. It's just been stripped clean with the sediment that continues to come down, right out to the confluence with the North Fork, which is where we've been on tour,
yeah.
and where it comes crashing together and again creates quite a dynamic environment.
So I suspect I could be pedantic here, so let me subordinate that to you. If you feel you've looked at it and you say, we really ought to sign it, I can go along with that.
Yeah, I would urge the degree of support. We've been working with them for a long time and they never ask us for money. So,
Well,
but they
at
get it
least
from
not
but they get
directly.
it from other grant
Yeah.
sources, so. And if you prefer, we can write up we can use our own verbiage too.
Oh,
It'd be one signature on it.
no, I think this is because it's going to have everybody signing the same thing. So I think that would be all right. It's floodplains by design. That's the name of
The grant.
the grant. Yeah,
Is
it's strange. It's a strange name right off the
Yeah.
bat.
When we took the last tour up there, the gentleman that was explaining a lot of that, is that who this
That's
is?
Bryce, yes.
Okay.
Right.
And he was talking about forming some channels, because he said they've come to learn that the fish will, they don't have to have the channel they were spawned in, but a channel to go up in. I mean, I'm assuming some of the things he was talking about that they're learning is what he might be talking about
Mhm.
over here.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, it's, and so right now they'll do a half a mile of a river bed.
And he talked about needing to replace some of the, what do you call the,
Woody debris structures, right?
yeah, he had, that have been in there.
So those are the log jams that slow the flow of the river down, creating pools, but also dropping sediment. So the more you do that uphill, the less comes down to the lower valley.
I came away fairly impressed with this guy for
Good.
that alone. I'd be comfortable doing that. I wish they would have included,
A little more specific,
yeah,
specificity.
yeah.
Yeah, I hope in your dealings with them, you can still encourage them to collect data with more, like, take a drone flight over that whole area every 7 days or something, a week. Because that's precious time that you can't get back and figure out what changes that amount of time.
Yeah,
And can you imagine if you had done all that and had the data and then Mount St. Helens blew, you would think, whoa, I was lucky I had all that data so I can look and see what could be done. And then the other thing in the overall picture of things, it's really hard for me to assess cost value. We might spend multiple millions here to feed the sea lions along the Columbia. And I'm like, I don't know.
yeah. I don't need to feed the sea lions, but,
We can treat the sea lions, but they might not be the method that the
yeah.
orcas can appreciate.
Yeah, I'd like to see him take advantage of the drone stuff too. And I also remember he was pointing out some pink stakes out there. I think they were monitoring sections of the deal where they had pockets and seeing
Yeah.
how the sediment flowed through that.
Yep.
Just as a sort of corollary sidebar, sometimes particularly if you're on the seacoast and when there's active shipping going on, like in San Diego, you've got the naval shipyards there. And you'll see on land a huge telephone post, if you will, just a post, just sticking way up there. And then they'll have another one maybe a mile away along the coast. And that's a measured distance, and the ships do use it for calibration.
Hmm.
Not unlike what they're doing there, but it's so easy to put in a few more markers. I'm just surprised. I mean, the payoff is significantly stronger.
Anyway, I think we're comfortable
Good. Okay.
with this. The other one we got was from Jennifer Keene.
Was that the railroad, a railroad grant?
It's they're submitting a request to the U.S. Department of Transportation's MARAD, whatever that acronym stands for.
We could make one up.
For the Port Infrastructure Development Program under the Small Ports and Plannings. Their grant ask, it looks like 350 to $500,000 to address overpass, road and rail. So they're just asking for a support letter.
Yeah, I've
They've
seen,
got quite a challenge as they develop the
Yeah.
south end. They've
Yep.
got that with the railroad tracks that they've got to go over. They can't very well go under
Yeah.
because
I guess
Water
I don't
table.
see that much different than Port of Kalama on the.
interesting. You make me But, yeah, I think this is a good thing. I've seen the overall plan and it's actually fairly impressive, but it's very costly, but it's kind of like, it's an argument I've had with a lot of people. If you know what needs to be done, just build it because it will pay for itself. But instead, we just dribble and dribble and dribble for decades sometimes. It just doesn't make sense to me. But so another thing, favor here is our Patrick Harbison will probably have a lot to do with this.
Oh, yeah, because he's
Because
changing jobs.
Yeah, exactly. Sad for us, happy for them.
Yeah.
Happy for the county overall. That's a hot spot down there.
So we're good with both these
Yeah.
letters of support.
The railroad thing was Calamas. I got the
Calamas,
port names confused.
And on the first little header, is that, there's some signature boxes there. Do we want to? I think there's value if all the commissioners sign on those supporting documents.
I agree.
Sure.
All three of us.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
on both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? I know Commissioner Morton had a chance to see my email on suggesting that we appoint Savannah, the planning commission. I don't know if Commissioner Weber's had a chance to.
I did.
See that?
Got a chance to look at it. And I was confused. Is that the seventh person that you're?
That's the seventh.
Because we had talked about somebody from the planning department and didn't Doug kind of put the cold water on that idea?
Yeah,
And-
that's what Doug essentially said. Don't go there.
Yeah,
But this is from somebody from another department.
yeah.
And while there may be a few instances where Public Works is involved in them, it's not going to be
She's
Much
not,
of a
she
conflict.
doesn't engineer roads or do any
Right.
of that, I think.
it's a different division, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and essentially, so Savannah reports to us, and the planning commission reports to us, so it's like, the buck does stop here.
yeah.
Will this be an assignment of her work job? Or is she doing this as a citizen? In other words, are we gonna have to pay her overtime?
No.
No.
No,
She's a,
I think she's exempt anyway.
she's exempt, and right,
It, yeah, there was no requirement on it. I just seeing the things, as I mentioned in there, the things she's presented, I think she'd be a good fit in that. And so I asked her if she wanted to do that, and it was totally left it up to her. And
Mhm.
she came back and said, yeah, I'd have some, she thought about it for about a week and did her own research because she tends to do that. And so with your guys' concurrence, we'll go ahead and do that.
Okay. Yep, so there's no
Okay.
doubt she's pretty capable.
yeah. So
Also, and it has nothing to do with the commission, but I think when we have employees we think have abilities, it's almost incumbent upon us to give them some experiences in areas they may not be familiar with for later down the road. It just helps.
completely agree.
Okay. Anything from out here? We
Oh.
don't, we're scheduled for 2:30, so, and we
Did you-
advertise that.
Did you want to debrief us on your staff meeting this morning, just the general atmosphere?
Go over that. Look, Kelly put it together. I talked, my part of it was I talked a little bit about, Washington DC trip. So we talked about the Silver Lake, the Tootle and all that we're dealing with and the erosion issues we're dealing with. Talked about the Hall of Justice, talked about the bridge. And then we touched a little bit on, the work we've been doing with the juvenile center. Trying to look at the path we're trying to head down. What else?
Who
did
was
I-
there? Just basically even from across the river?
Well, yeah, the sheriff was there.
Oh, good,
FinCon
okay.
was Zoomed.
Yeah,
The clerk was there. I don't remember everybody.
Molly Martin was there from District Court.
good. Okay, so there was good
Judge Harmon
representation.
was there.
Yeah, we introduced Travis to everybody. Kelly did up the agenda. I wasn't the whole part of it. They talked about the changes we've had in there with new employees, the new personnel policy we just put into place.
Oh, that was a good one to talk
Yeah.
about, yeah.
Savannah, they kind of touched on, and this was before my time, the lean program. They'd like to see that get going again. Are you familiar? The lean program?
Yeah, the Kaizen or lean, yeah, it's I wouldn't say anything, but when I first came on board, well, I'll say something, obviously. Yeah, when I first came on board, we had what was his name? Dennis Luthi? Dr. Luth,
The strategic plan guy.
yeah, and he was just bleeding us. I think we paid him back in those dollars, 240,000 in total, and I don't think we could ever put a finger on what we got out of it. But the lean programs were fairly active in those days.
And I don't think he was the inspiration on that, but that came from staff-driven improvement of processes.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
process would graph out all the different steps it took to do some simple things, and they'd get together and say, we don't need to do all this, cut it right down. We actually hired an expert to do that in our own office. Her name is Kelly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they described
And
it
she-
as kind of a bottom-up thing and
Yeah.
It is a bottom-up thing, and it's a very natural thing. And if you noted hesitancy on my part, it's just because I think, why do you need a special name for something you should be doing and should have always been doing your entire life, is saying, I cut the lawn, you plant flowers, am I gonna cut the lawn on top of your flowers kind of thing? I mean, just natural interaction, but we are so compartmentalized that it's probably a good thing.
what else do we? Oh, I should inform you, it's because he's handed in resignation, so it'll be public record. John Diamond has resigned from 911.
Really?
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
Any,
gave a resignation letter to the sheriff. Brad is the chair of that committee last week, so he's given 90 days notice, so if we choose to keep him 90 days to help with the transition, so.
so you're saying if we had somebody to step in place immediately, he'd just go,
Yeah,
yeah, okay,
yeah. I mean, there'd probably be severance, but
yeah. Hmm.
Was that a board initiated change, or he has something else happening, or?
no, it wasn't a board initiated change. He wasn't asked to leave.
Okay, yeah, I thought he'd been doing a pretty good job.
He came from outside the county, didn't he?
San Juan, he came from San Juan County, where he
Oh,
was
okay.
doing a similar job. I think he was deputy director at their 911.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with his history, but that's why Brad grabbed me after
Oh, yeah.
the morning meeting. Cause I was in a meeting, what are we, Wednesday? It was Monday. And we had our meeting, so I couldn't attend what they were doing.
Who does the hiring for that? That's the 911 board, right?
Yeah,
That appears to be a hard job to fill.
I guess, yeah.
that's what I know about that right now is gets further down the process and they start putting out how they want to handle it, either with an interim or they just start looking or however they want to do it.
Hmm. He was there for a year and a half, maybe?
Around about 2 years, I think.
2 years?
But he helped finish the building project, which was just filled with
To- to-
delay after delay after delay.
To his credit, when he was hired, I think they expected the building to be done. He wasn't supposed to be in that part of it and he kind of got thrown into,
The basement.
yeah.
Yeah.
And dealing with all the stuff of getting that thing built, which had its own can of worms for sure.
Hmm.
Anything I missed on the meeting this morning? Yeah, I think they enjoyed having it. I heard quite a few express it was nice to get back together again, so
And we're doing those quarterly.
quarterly.
Yeah, before they were monthly and they were pretty useless. Didn't you think so, Dennis? And we spent a lot of time from safety tips. God bless Clyde, but it was like, oh no, please.
Well, and then we hired the administrator and he took care of the department meetings.
I beg your pardon?
When we hired Axel Swanson, then one of the things was he was doing the staff meetings. And we got out of the habit of meeting regularly with staff.
Yeah, we did pass the buck. Sort of like I did last night with the chairman.
Yeah.
What?
I told him, I told John.
Yeah. Do you know what we're talking about there, Dennis?
I-
There was a repartee at the central committee meeting.
Oh,
And I said something like, well, he was at the other side of the room, I was opposite, and I said, well, actually praise goes here, complaints go there.
Yeah.
And of course, he liked it because he's well practiced at handling complaints now. He especially enjoys the collection of hand gestures he gets.
Yeah, that come my way, expressing how important I am.
Yes.
Well, I won't start Kathy early because we announced it at 2:30 and there just actually may be somebody that wants to see it at 2:30, so we'll just probably recess till 2:30. Okay? Lose Commissioner Weber, he had another appointment that we knew about, so you're with us, and today we got going over lodging, sales tax and reserve, and we have Kathy here to do that, so I'll turn it over.
Okay, so I have a presentation. I have a few handouts in case somebody wants one. But we have, it's Kathy Funk Baxter, Finance Director. And it's interesting. It's April 24th of 2024, 24.
Yeah, I heard you do that backward, you get the same day.
So we have, our lodging sales tax is governed by RCW 67.28180. And basically, the first part of the tax is what they call basic tax. And it's actually a credit against the sales tax of the state. So the sales tax of the state is 6.5%. So as a patron, they don't pay any more on sales tax than they normally would for this basic tax. But we receive the proceeds from that credit, and so do the cities. So a county has the authority to levy these lodging taxes for hotel motel taxes. And basically it's on accommodations that are for 30 days or less. So they now are calling it a the, they've labeled it as transient rental, but it's on furnishings at what you traditionally believe is hotels, motels, short-term rentals, and bed and breakfast, as well as RV parks and any other housing and lodging accommodations that are less than 30 days.
But this is
So-
this is a rebate back from the state. It's not
Yes,
something we've added to people in this county.
right, right.
Yeah.
It's a
How much
rebate.
is the rebate?
It's 2%. 2% of the 6.5% state tax
Oh,
comes back
okay.
to the jurisdictions. And they call that the basic lodging tax, and I'll explain why, because they have an additional lodging tax. So the 2%, next slide, 2% is basically, like I said, a credit against the state sales tax. For our county, this was first imposed in 1977. And the county receives 2%, but we only receive the 2% on the unincorporated areas, or while the cities receive their respective 2% portion. So as you can imagine, are receiving very little in comparison to, for example, the city of Kelso, which predominantly has most of the hotel receipts.
Now, does that go to them directly?
Yes.
It doesn't come to us.
It doesn't come to us, it goes to them directly. So for the county, we have a county code, 3.40, and it's titled Special Excise Tax. And it refers back to this lodging tax, and it's stipulates that it's deposited in a special fund known as Stadium Convention Center Fund. So it's interesting, it's a lodging tax, but the fund that it's in doesn't say anything about lodging. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. And I think this is just a carryover from many years ago, when there's been many changes to the lodging taxes over the years. And so it's being deposited in the Stadium Convention Center Fund. This fund falls in,
And the code hasn't kept up with what we've actually done.
yeah, the code has been changed many times, and so but it's fine. It falls under the same jurisdiction that I'm going to talk about as far as like how you can use it. And so it falls under the guidelines that it must be used for tourism, promotion, acquisition of tourism-related facilities, or operation of tourism-related facilities. And then it's also governed by the fact that in some of the changes that have been made over the years, that was created a lodging tax advisory committee, and it's LTAC. And that's used to make recommended awards and it's supposed to be for all of the lodging tax revenues that the county receives. So counties, and they're also recommending in that the county should submit an application for our own projects to the LTAC. And as I understand it, we present the things that are budgeted off of the tourism dollars to the LTAC and provide that for them. But we probably should officially make sure that they're actually approving those projects. It should be noted that if the county does not agree with the recommendations of the LTAC, we do have some authority to present changes back to the LTAC if we don't agree with their recommendations. But we have to have a 45-day comment period if we're going to not agree with their recommendations.
You know, one of the commissioners sits on that board. At this point in time, it's me.
I think so.
I
I'm
don't
gonna-
know if
I'm-
that causes any problems.
Yeah, I don't know. I'll tell you why, because it dictates who's supposed to be on the board. So, in the legislation. So currently, approximately, we received about $130,000 annually from this tax source. And we're predominantly using that to support the tourism and the expo center.
So that 130,000 was just the county portion.
Yes, just the county portion for lodging taxes, that first 2%.
Right, and the city portions must be twice that or three times that?
Oh, a lot more. Like, for example, when I looked at it, some of the older records, where we were getting maybe 60,000 annually, City of Kelso was getting over 100, like twice or three times the
So a
amount.
lot more than just,
And their funds don't need to go into this.
No.
They,
mm-mm.
it's all separate to them.
Yeah, it's governed by them. And then they're subject to these same provisions. They have to have an LTAC as well.
Gotcha. Okay.
So then there's a extra 2%, which they call special. And so that results in additional tax that's collected from the consumer, person with the hotel. It was first enacted by our county in 1993, and it's governed by RCW 67.28.181. And we also have public facilities districts that have the right to also collect. And in this case, ours is collecting 1%. But it's kind of odd because they collect only on the hotels that have 40 or more rooms. They're not collecting any of the sales tax on hotels that have less than 40 rooms. But most of the hotels in our area are in excess of the 40 rooms, or hotels or other lodging establishments. I believe, when I was looking at my research, I believe that they started collecting the lodging tax, the PFD, in 2004 was the first time that they started collecting those taxes. Cities now, part of the legislation says that because we had been collecting our lodging tax prior to 1997, that none of the cities in our county can collect this 2% special tax. Only the county can, and only the PFD. And then there's a cap for the sales tax combined with other sales taxes, and it cannot exceed 12%, which of course we're nowhere near that.
So if the county had not enacted this additional tax in 1993, the cities could do that.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think because of the fact that we had enacted the original lodging tax, the first 2%,
Oh,
they can't. So it's written, and it's it's footnoted in all of the tax charts.
So you're going back to like 1977.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
So anyway,
But there has been a big bone of contention.
Yeah.
You'll address that?
so this, because the cities can't collect this additional 2% special tax, which is for tourism, they don't have those revenue sources coming to them, but they also have the ability to apply to the LTAC for grants through this program. So,
Yeah. Well, I think we're kind of thinking the same. Why would we collect it when we're going to collect less than if the cities collect it?
no,
That's where the
on
concentration.
on this one, we actually are, on this 2%, we get all of the
Oh,
tax for all of the lodging establishments, regardless of what city they're in.
And that's where the
That's where the
contention
Yeah.
contention-
comes in.
But it all comes centrally to the county, and then through the LTAC, anyone who is promoting tourism or has a tourism activity can apply for grants through our funding.
I think Collis County is the only county that has that.
Yeah, we are unique. We're, like I said, we're footnoted in all the charts, pretty
Oh, really?
much.
Yeah. And the contention has been municipalities have gone to the legislature and asked for what you thought that, why don't they collect the 2%? And the 2% was tied into Hofstad Bluffs at one point for maintenance. And because Hofstad Bluffs is gone, that's the argument that they use. It's kind of interesting because when you pool that 2%, you can actually do projects of interest to places that don't have a lot of hotel revenue.
Right.
And so City of Kalama, for example, was really happy doing it the old way because they might collect this much in their local tax, but by the time they went to LTAC and they got a program approved, maybe they get that much more. Until McMinimans came in, and then they said, no, we really want the 2% from McMinimans.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I can understand, yeah.
Yeah,
But this can affect like even outlying areas like Cougar? Any place in Callis County?
yeah, any place in
Yes,
California.
any,
I mean,
any place within our county
places would have the ability if they were
to
structured
apply
right.
for one of the grants. Mhm. So, we have a county code that also relates to this tax. It's County Code 3.42, and it refers to it as the lodging excise tax. But what's interesting is, it has a distinction of where the funds are placed. So half of the funds, 50% of the funds, are deposited into a special fund known as Tourist Fund Facilities Development and Marketing Fund. The other half is put into an account, a fund called Cumulative Reserve Fund. So there's a history on that, and as Arn brought up, the cumulative reserve was actually established in 1981 by the county when we had a windfall of profits from a timber harvest at Mount St. Helens. And until 1994, the fund was used substantially for Mount St. Helens related projects. And then cash transfers were made to various funds periodically as approved by the Board of Commissioners. And in 1994, the Board of Commissioners made the decision that the fund balance, to reduce the fund balance to just $1 million, and the sum of a little over $5 million was transferred to the General Governmental Projects Fund for capital projects. So interest earnings and the cash balance were also transferred semi-annually to the General Governmental Capital Projects Fund. And then in 1997, a decision was made that the remaining fund balance was transferred in total to the General Governmental Capital Projects Fund. Somewhere along the line, this 1/2 of the lodging tax, the special excise tax, started going into the cumulative reserve fund. And it was primarily used as subsidies for special events, subsidies for the Silver Lake Gift Shop, contributions to a program called the Big Idea Fund, which is no longer around, and then operating subsidies for the Hofstad Bluffs Visitor Center, which continue to grow as more and more repairs and things need to be done on that facility. But that facility was sold. And so, but the funds have still continued to go into this cumulative reserve fund. So then I did a little research on the cumulative reserve fund, and the policy creating, like I said, creating the fund has been amended a little bit over the years, but it refers to the cumulative reserve fund with no reference whatsoever to the lodging tax. It refers to it as a fund for emergencies, purchases of supplies, materials, equipment, construction, repairs, improvements that are of any public work or public building. And that flies in the face of the rules governing this lodging tax because it can only be used for tourism. So I'm making a recommendation that we update our code, the code 3.42, and no longer deposit that 50% to the cumulative reserve fund and basically deposit 100% of the fund into the tourism account. Because right now I'm actually doing a transfer every year from the cumulative fund over to the tourism fund anyway. And so it seems very inefficient. And it also does not coincide with the county policy. So that's one of my recommendations as part of doing this research.
Yeah, I think that's a good recommendation.
Thank you. And so I'll continue on. Then this special lodging tax, again, it falls under the same guidelines that it has to be used for tourism.
Let me ask
Oh,
Kim
sure.
real quick. Do you still, the visitor center, do you still operate out of LTAC or?
For the Silver Lake gift shop?
Yeah,
It
no.
has its own fund.
Okay, okay,
So there's no
Yeah.
monies.
okay. Thanks.
Yeah. I think it receives a very small subsidy if needed from the Expo Center.
It's actually backwards.
Okay.
Expo would give it.
Okay. We get it, but anyway, so no, it doesn't
I
receive
just
any of
didn't
this.
steal funds if they were
Yeah.
being used.
Yeah.
So it too has to be, so they're similar in nature, both the first 2% and the second 2% have to be spent on tourism, promotion, facilities, capital basically, and operational cost of tourism related facilities. And it's also governed by the LTAC. And so county use of funds, I recommend as well, they have to be sent to the LTAC. So one of the things that I'm recommending is that when we put together our recommendations for the LTAC or right before we do our budget, that we get the LTAC to actually approve those items that the county is utilizing the funds for. So for example, we're utilizing the funds for marketing, for our marketing and advertising budget, which is about grand total about 130,000 a year. So basically get the LTAC to approve those before the beginning of the budget year. So. And then for this fund, you can see the difference. For 2023, we collected approximately $556,000 just for this additional 2% because it's on all lodging establishments in the county, not just the unincorporated areas. So.
So just to be sure, the additional 2% amounts to this 556?
Mhm. And the other 2%, remember, it's on a smaller portion, it's just the unincorporated areas. So you can imagine right now that between the county and the cities for the first 2%, everybody is sharing about $556,000, depending upon the location of the facility.
So the multiplier number I was looking for is, this cities collect 556 minus the 130, so,
Mhm.
or another way of looking at that, it's about a factor of 4.
Yeah, better go
Okay.
therefore.
So and then this 560, 556, half of that presently goes to that reserve fund?
it's going to the cumulative reserve fund, but then we turn around and transfer out of the cumulative reserve fund.
And we're suggesting we just stop doing that.
Yeah, we just make it
So-
more transparent and put everything in the tourism account. Then you have a
And-
better reading of what you have, what what amounts haven't been spent.
So there'd be an initial bump to that and then a yearly bump that they'd get that could be granted out
Yeah.
in the process. Yeah.
And on the cumulative reserve fund, unspent funds that we have accumulated over the years that haven't been dispersed, it's a little over $400,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's sitting there right now.
Oh, I got you. Okay.
Yep.
I got you. So
Oh,
half of
s-
that 550.
Yeah, so hold on. I was looking at the wrong piece of paper. So in the cumulative reserve fund, we have $800,000 sitting there not being dispersed
As of the moment.
as of the moment. And then on the stadium, which is that first 2%, that's the way they refer to it, the first 2% that's on that little small piece. We haven't spent very much of it either in the past. That's where we have $430,000 of cash sitting there as well.
So in the future, if we make this change, then that 800,000 will get transferred over to
The tourism,
the tourism that will be subject to grants and
yes,
stuff. And I almost
yes.
wonder if that's enough money, if there's a one project type thing that should be looked at. I don't know the answer to that. I just kind of
I
throwing
don't
that,
either. I
that
mean,
out. I
You
guess
have your, you
maybe
have your,
LTAC.
yeah, you have your the project that the PFD's doing, the, projects to
Yeah.
anything related to the convention center, as far as capital would be eligible.
It's just my cautious side. I don't want to begrudge the cities having
Yeah.
funds to do their things, but then I don't want a whole bunch of little things in there because we got it. We got this great flyer that's going to bring in 20,000 people. We need some money. Yeah, okay.
So then the next slide, I wanted to show you a trend, just so you could see the collections over the last 10 years. And I combined the two funds, the cumulative reserve, the amount that's being contributed to the cumulative reserve and the amount that was being contributed to the tourism fund. Because it's the same revenue stream. And so you can see in 2013, we went from collecting about $300,000 to 2023, $556,000 for that tax. And then for the stadium convention, which is that smaller piece, that it's grown. It went from about 42,000, or I'm sorry, my eyes are bad. It's 48,000 to 130,000 in 2023. And you have the one, I would have thought that the 1 year that the COVID would be a more significant dip than it is. So I was very surprised. And the rebound was pretty good after the year after COVID, or 2020. So that's your history. It's pretty stable.
Do you have the occupancy numbers or
I don't
percentage?
have any of that. I just have the collections.
Just have the dollars. Yeah.
So the membership and the duties of the LTAC. So you're right. This is all laid out. The committee, this is on our website. Committee consists of at least 5 members, and 2 members are representative of businesses that are required to collect the tax and 2 members for activities involved in being able to receive the funding. And then 1 elected official of the county who serves as chair. And then those are the requirements, and then the rest, membership on the committee will be reviewed annually. So currently it's our commissioner chair, someone from the tourist department, and then 2 receivers of the tax and 2 collectors of the tax. And I understood that the last person that was on here, it's actually vacant right now. So.
I'm only smiling because if there's any simplicity, we eschew it. Let's make things a little more complicated for us, please.
Oh, no, we got to have more steps than this.
That's right. And
I-
and I do appreciate your cleaning it up,
Yeah.
and simplifying is a good thing.
I'm just thinking out loud here because we have to think in a public setting,
Yeah,
and I'll have cities probably clamoring at me, but you have this chunk of money. Does it make any kind of sense to put out like an RFP or something to try and find a project that might provide benefit greater than just individual functions coming into town? I don't know that it does. I just throwing a thought out.
lots of thoughts. I think that's a reasonable thing to do. You're probably best served by making it in a sort of RFP format, so nobody feels particularly slighted until the evaluation, and then they'll feel slighted. Um, it- What I struggle with is tourism is one of those things which is a blessing and a curse at the same time. And we have funded out of LTAC dollars things, or partially funded things like the turf at the Rister and things like that. And I think those are justifiable. I don't recall spending something that I felt was contrary to it. But we don't really know. I mean, I haven't seen any numbers that say, because you've spent as a county overall $500,000 on the turf at Rister Field, we actually increased tourism, or we can trace lodging nights to that.
Well, they're, on the next slide, they are required, if they receive the funding, they're required to, because of an annual reporting requirement that was put in place, they're actually required to tell us, or at least estimate, the number of attendees, and the purpose is to increase overnight, accommodations. And so they're required to try to estimate or tell how many patrons of their event or activity traveled more than 50 miles away, had an overnight stay, things like that. So they're required to fill out some information about their event. But in most cases, when I look at it, they're putting, it's pretty arbitrary. There's not a definitive, and there's not required any definitive. They can do sampling, they can do estimates, things like that. So,
Yeah.
I think the event center is probably the best entity that has collected that kind of information. Isn't that right, Kim?
Yeah.
Yeah, your lodging facilities would be the. Good afternoon, Kim Bocut with the Event Center. We rely a lot on the lodging facilities because they're getting the most information from their clientele as to where they're coming from and why they're in town. When you check into a hotel, typically somebody will ask you, oh, what brings you to the area? Or they have a room block saying, I'm with the, Jones event at the event center, so they've got a room block. So we rely a lot on the hotels. And there's also some reporting that comes from the state too as to spending in our county. That's,
Now that goes to you?
that comes to the tourism department. Yeah, outside the event center. The event center itself, we do a little bit of tracking with our clients. We try to, but they're also relying on hotels as well and their attendee information that they're able to or not able to gather.
Yeah. And it's sometimes hard to know if you put a facility at the southern edge of the county, right? So right next to Vancouver, do we count the people from Vancouver that come into the county?
Yeah.
And how important is that? I don't know.
Yeah.
The reason I'm thinking that is if you look at one element of the Port of Woodland tax or the plans or the city of Woodland, there's that whole area they want to build into a marina and all kinds of nice stuff. Did we do anything with the Port of Kalama for LTAC dollars?
No,
I don't think we've done anything. with that.
no, they have not
And yet-
requested anything.
On their own initiative, they bring in the cruise ships and they have the marketplace now. Anyhow,
Yeah, I agree. In the Marina Kalama, there's a good number that will run down to the Marina at St. Helens.
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of crossing over and bringing people in.
Well, that marina in Kalama, I mean, the new cruise terminal is, I just got our May schedule and almost every day in May, we have tour groups coming up to Mount St. Helens from that terminal.
That-
So
That just is kind of what spurs, is there something we can look at as a whole that really benefits pretty much the whole county? I don't know what it would be. I don't.
the only thing that comes to mind of everything I know is actually something aquatic, and it's the
Yeah.
Port of Woodland
Yeah.
plans on that.
And the LTAC, just to back up a little bit, the LTAC 2 years ago recognized that we did have more money coming in with Hofstad being sold and the big idea board going away. And so they did create the large grant
Yeah.
opportunity. The largest amount that we have granted so far was just in this last round, that the contracts just went out, and that was for Castle Rock for their North County facility that they're finishing. And I think that was about $80,000 that that the LTAC is granting them. But that's the largest to date that I've seen so far with that program. But that program is designed for large, we did put a cap on it. And so with the excess, we could put a larger cap on that. But that was why that grant program was designed, was for facilities to be potentially built or
Yeah.
improved.
So that's true. So that might work just fine in that area. Because it is designed for facilities and type things.
Right. Yes, we have the
This is
large grant and
located
this.
where?
In North County, it's the area behind the high school. They've developed ball fields and now they develop
Yeah.
a house that you.
It's like an event center,
I don't
small event
wanna
center.
call it a house, but yeah, it's an event center. You can do weddings, you can do all reunions, whatever in there.
Yeah, the thing about that, does that qualify bringing people in from, is it 50 miles away from the county line or 50 miles?
Well,
Yeah.
and
They're
Kathy's right.
asking it-
They're supposed to track that stuff.
Yeah,
I would agree that sometimes, yeah, you may.
Yeah.
How you're tracking it.
They,
may be a question.
they really want the overnight stay. In addition to that, they ask for that additional information about those traveling 50 miles or more. But they really keyed in on the overnight. It doesn't matter if it's what the distance is.
I think
but-
that's the metric that they
Mhm.
want us to concentrate on.
Yep.
It's fair enough, although I don't really understand why that would be overall beneficial unless it came from outside the county.
And it's not a requirement. I mean, it's just saying, if you have to give us this information as part of the grant award.
On the other hand, it's a tax on the business that it's trying to support, so that's,
You know, sometimes, what's the event they have in Kalama that's the barbecue thing?
the annual,
Big Smoke, Little Kalama. is
Yeah,
that-
that
or-
now is growing, aren't they wanting to add bands? I mean, it's been growing with people coming in and because now you have minimums where they can stay and
they
different
got a
places.
whopping $5,000 to support it.
Yeah. Yeah.
The nice thing about the kind of money here, at least seems like, eh, thinking on a large scale is a good thing. So I don't know what the future of the little smoke, or whatever it is. That's pretty limited, I would think. But like I think of the event center, and I know different entities, but I don't know of an equestrian center that's got potential for dressage and jumping and so forth. And I'm pretty sure if that were built, that would bring all kinds of people that typically have the money.
Without
How
a
many
doubt.
people? I don't
Without a
know.
doubt.
I beg pardon?
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that kind of along the thinking, if we can help some of those or the RV park over there, if it's there and people will be there. It's the same with the event center. How many times you get out to Rocky Top every year?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of
I
an
know.
8-week series, so.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that,
Do you know how we're doing regarding some of the upgrades on the ball fields has been advertised as we're gonna have the tournaments here for statewide tournaments for at least baseballs, what I remember. I don't think any of that has materialized, has it?
I'm not positive.
You're talking about
Uh,
when we redid the fields over
Yeah,
here, Brister.
Rister and
Yeah, I
Tamashan.
remember them talking because they were going down to Vancouver and stuff and they felt they could bring the tournaments up here.
and then we
But
have Scott.
I haven't heard either.
And
We have a
Scott Park,
turf at Rister.
And
Yeah.
it wouldn't bother me if we didn't compete against each other, like the difference between Scott Park distance-wise and Rister, I don't think is significant, so maybe Rister could be baseball and Scott could be soccer or something like that.
I
The
know.
World Cup in Woodland, that would work.
The Woodland World Cup.
the next slide shows just a recap of the expenses for 2023. So the tourism grant program in total, small grants as well as large grants, awarded 170,201. Advertising and web presence cost about 136,000. And then there are personnel, there's a position devoted to the tourism, and that with expenses and other expenses, that's 131,000. We also do contribute to 3 chamber visitor centers, which is Woodland, Castle Rock, and then the Kelso Longview, and for a total of $50,000. And then a transfer is made to the Expo Center for predominantly for repairs and maintenance, $45,000. So we expended last year $533,000, which is what we're reporting in that LTAC annual report. And they ask us to do every single activity individually in that report. And so that's where I have to put in whatever those entities said as far as the number of visitors, overnight stays, things like that. So all of that's being collected.
How often does LTAC meet?
It's noted in their page on the website as needed. We've tried to get them to meet quarterly. So that's,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've met with them twice, both during small grant and then the large grant.
our next meeting should be, I believe, in June,
Yeah.
if I remember right. But we're trying, it used to be, there was not a real set time. And then last year I asked after COVID and I just said, you know, we're getting a lot of requests and a lot of different things. So we need to meet at least quarterly. So, and I think that's helpful for the members of the board as well. To set those meetings in their calendar a little bit ahead of time and plan to be there. Everybody's busy, but
Yeah.
it's important.
I'll tell the story. The first time I got on there, her name is, who's the Laluska gal?
Mariah.
Mariah is on there, and I was telling her, you know, I had an uncle lived in Longview, a fellow by the name of Johnny Donovan, that was really big with the Luskas. And she goes, "Oh, you know Johnny?" I said, "Yeah, he was an uncle of mine. He wasn't Indian, but Johnny was big in the culture, and he knew the chief, and he actually got to sit and play with him, which was very rare."
Mhm.
And so I said, I can remember going up there, him taking us up there, and we're small, and you go into their lodge and they put on a deal. And I said, you had this one where a guy would dance around and he would come and take bad children, and he had this mask, and then when he'd come around, he'd flip this thing over, and it was just this scary mask. And I said, I can still remember where I was sitting when he scared the hell out of me. She goes, she goes, that was my dad. I said, well, you tell him I still got scars.
So if I look at the numbers and what we spent in 23 is about what we collected in 23?
It's close. We collect about 550 and we spent 533, but then we also collected the other.
100.
And so you can
130.
see we're not expending all of the funds. And I think part of it is like Kim said, we were putting half in that cumulative reserve fund. So it's in these two different funds. It's hard to even manage that way. So
You know, when I think of the private world in research and development, you'll get a company like IBM who has so much invested in the past that they don't invest in the
In the
future.
future.
So that's why they lost the PC business, how they lost to Microsoft, is they just couldn't take a little bit of their profit and invest it there. I'm wondering if we should have the notion that we want to take some percentage per year that we add to a pot that we would use for a big project, and the rest of it spent, and the big project we would spend when we saw something of value come in. So I'm just thinking 10% sounds like a reserve number for the big project. So each year, you know that you're going to add to that. I also would go back to what I kind of think we've agreed on, which is if there is something constructive we can do with it, we should do it. We should spend this money. It's only aging in the accounts. Although because of Deborah's skill, she's getting 4.5% on it,
5.04.
5.04.
Yeah.
I'm dyslexic.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. If future commissioners would realize that what that was for, and we've done it with the rural tax, right? You've seen a big
Oh, yeah.
project and done it, and then you pay yourself back every year. I don't know that you do that this way, but when you had something that come along, you say, wow, we don't get this opportunity very often. It'd be nice to be able to do that.
Yeah.
If you could assure it wasn't stolen for something else.
Well, that's the magic of this very
It's
restricted.
very
fund.
restricted.
Yeah.
And it's,
Otherwise, yes.
and because it's the LTAC and it's supposed to be local and it's supposed to be, the emphasis is spend locally on projects. So
Yeah.
you have the input of your advisory group.
One thing that seems odd to me is 50,000 combined doesn't seem like a lot of money for the visitor centers.
Yeah, it's 15,000 for Woodland, 15,000 for Castle Rock, and then 20,000 for Longview Kelso.
Yeah, the Longview Kelso Visitor Center is actually, I don't know if I've been to the Castle Rock one, but the Longview Kelso is a nice one. The one in Woodland is like,
Castle Rock just built a new one. It's off the exit where the park and ride is,
no.
and it's very nice. Woodlands is an old trailer that
Mhm.
if you, the gal was telling me she had a high heel and it went through the floor. It's really bad. So,
Well, clearly you must have a sign out there that says no high heels
yeah,
allowed.
I think so. There's warning signs now.
Are there?
I don't know. Probably a high heel with a slash through it.
That's all I have.
Sounds to me like the LTAC should chime in on.
That's what I was just thinking. And next time we get together, maybe we should just talk some of this over, do it other than a grant meeting, so we can just talk some of that over, because I think we both agree with the changing of the code, but the thoughts on if we should still set aside for some large project or do something, I think that we should still have some communication, some thought process on that.
Yes, and the last meeting they did ask, they were asking some financial questions that we didn't have answers to. So I think giving them the full financial picture and being able to meet and talk about that in a little bit better format when we aren't evaluating grants.
We should have had them in here today.
Yeah. But I think having an in-person meeting, I think we've been doing it on Zoom to accommodate schedules, but
Kathy, I might
in
even
person and
beg you to,
Oh, sure.
join.
Sure.
To join.
doesn't need, it can be a shorter version or whatever, just give them an understanding of it. Yeah,
Sure.
good. Well done.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
A little bit. There's and I don't remember her name, but there is a lady, Castle Rock Toodle, that will take you out for trail rides. Yeah. 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 Do we have any, I better check for public comments before we end this thing? You don't see any? Okay, we're adjourned.